Faced with waste issues that changed over time, Japan set up its related legal systems and continued to develop them, strengthened coordination among the national government, local prefectural and municipal authorities, private sectors and citizens, introduced appropriate waste technologies, and established a sound material cycle society. This educational material introduces the waste-related challenges that Japan has faced from the post-war period and how these challenges were tackled and solved with actual case studies. Prior to the end of World War II in 1945, Japan suffered from epidemics of cholera, plague, and other infectious diseases brought into the country from overseas. Waste collection points became generation sources for flies and mosquitoes that carried these diseases. This situation led to an increased focus on improving public health and the living environment through eliminating waste accumulation and litter in urban areas. After the end of the war, reforms were implemented to support the wide reconstruction programs, and the population gradually became more concentrated in urban areas. The accompanying increase in amounts generated in these areas led to the need for improved management of that waste. At the time, waste was being dumped into rivers and oceans and piled in the open on the streets. These practices, just as in the pre-war period, caused a widespread of infectious diseases by flies, mosquitoes, and rats that infested and multiplied in the uncollected waste. At the time, household waste was being collected by handcarts. However, there were obviously limits to waste collection by human labor, and communities found themselves unable to handle the rapidly growing amount of waste. Collected wastes were being transferred from handcarts to motor vehicles for transport onwards to incineration plants and landfill sites. The handcart operation and transfer work were being done on the streets, and the resulting waste scattering became a serious problem. Although the law stipulated that municipalities were responsible for waste management, the coordination system with other stakeholders, such as the national government and residents, had not yet been fully developed. Japan faced a variety of waste management problems. To solve these problems, the Public Cleansing Act was enacted in 1954. The purpose of this act was to improve public health by disposing of waste in a sanitary manner to ensure the cleanliness of the living environment. This act was proposed because the Waste Cleaning Act, which was enacted in 1900, was no longer in line with social conditions and unable to provide the adequate legal base required in supporting the waste management service after about 50 years from its enactment. The Public Cleansing Act was proposed to ensure that waste management service was carried out more efficiently. The Public Cleansing Act defined the responsibilities of a national government, prefectures, municipalities, and citizens. The responsibility of a municipality was to efficiently implement waste management service by improving staff capabilities, developing related facilities, and improving operations, in addition to fulfilling the basic responsibility of waste collection and disposal. The responsibility of prefectures was to provide the necessary technical support to enable municipalities to satisfactorily fulfill their responsibilities. The national government's responsibility was to provide the necessary technical and financial support to prefectures and the municipalities. The Act also stipulated that citizens have an obligation to cooperate with waste collection and disposal carried out by prefectural and municipal governments. Along with the implementation of this act, steps were taken to mechanize waste collection. The goal was to remove waste from housing areas and improve the living environment in urban areas through more efficient and sanitary waste collection and transport. Regarding the mechanization of waste collection, primary waste collection from each household to waste collection points by handcarts was abolished in principle, and instead, door-to-door collection by small motor vehicle was introduced. The mechanization of waste collection had the effect of improving environmental sanitation and work efficiency. This also led to development in mechanization in many other areas of waste management. During this period, municipal waste had been rapidly increasing due to economic development and population concentration in urban areas. Lack of coordination among government organizations responsible for waste management and efficient waste collection were the primary reasons why large amounts of waste were left uncollected on the streets. People faced serious public health problems from the large numbers of flies and mosquitoes generated by the uncollected waste and the spread of infectious diseases. For this reason, a legal system was put in place to provide a foundation and basis for waste management in line with social conditions. Specifically, the Public Cleansing Act was enacted, and this act clearly defined the division's roles among the national government, prefectures, municipalities, and citizens. In addition to the legal system, the mechanization of waste collection was promoted. Efficient and sanitary collection and transport of waste that had been overflowing in the cities and the removal of waste from urban areas helped to improve public health in cities. In the 1960s and 70s, while Japan experienced rapid economic growth and an increase in citizens' affluence, rapid industrialization gave rise to pollution, which became a serious social problem. Rapid economic growth led to an increase in the income of the citizens, which brought about the rapid spread of home appliances such as TVs and refrigerators. In addition, with the introduction of supermarkets and convenience stores, the public's consumption behavior changed towards the mass production, mass consumption, and mass disposal-oriented economic structure. This change in turn led to a rapid increase in the amounts and types of waste being generated. Vigorous economic activities generated huge amounts of various waste. The serious shortage in landfill capacities became a major issue due to the rapid increase in the amount of waste generated. To address this challenge, Japan promoted incineration treatment as a sanitary method to dispose of and reduce waste that was rapidly increasing in amount and types. Incineration reduces the amount of waste to be landfilled by burning waste to ash. Because of Japan's small land area and the difficulty of securing landfill sites, the limited sites available have to be kept operable for as long as possible. Waste reduction through incineration contributed to reducing final disposal amounts. In addition, the Public Cleansing Act was fully amended in 1970, and the Waste Management and Public Cleansing Law was enacted. This law clearly defined responsibilities according to waste categories and established a basic system for waste management. The main provisions of the Waste Management and Public Cleansing Law are clear definitions of waste, classification of waste into two categories, namely industrial waste generated in business activities and municipal waste. Municipalities continue to be responsible for the disposal of municipal waste as in the past, and the responsibility of disposing of industrial waste lies with the business operators who generate the waste. In particular, the reason for defining industrial waste as a category separate from municipal waste was that while industrialization progressed and industrial activities in Japan became more dynamic during this high economic growth period, the waste generated by these activities were not being properly disposed of by the waste-generating business operators. This law also clearly stated that its purpose was to preserve the living environment, which included taking actions on environmental issues in addition to improving waste treatment as a measure to address public health issues. During this period, economic growth and dynamic production and consumption activities led to a diversification in the types of waste. To address this issue, legislation was developed to deal with a wide variety of waste and to clarify the definitions of waste and the responsibilities for the waste management. Japan also faced a shortage in landfills capacity due to the rapid increase in the generated waste. Confronted by this rapid increase in the amount and types of waste, Japan moved forward with the incineration treatment to sanitarily dispose of waste and reduce the amount to be landfilled. During this period, Especially from 1986 to 1991, Japan underwent an unprecedented economic boom with a surge in stock prices, rising real estate prices, and an increase in personal wealth. Consequently, a full-blown consumer society emerged where people would purchase all types of items only to throw them away in short order. As a result, the amount of waste continued to increase. The annual tonnage of waste generation increased from about 8.9 million in 1960 to about 50.3 million by 1990. This resulted in a sharp increase in the amount of waste that had to be incinerated. However, the health effects of dioxins that were generated during the incineration process became a major concern and a social issue, and a strong opposition arose against the operation of incinerators and constructions of new facilities. Waste treatment facilities were compelled to implement environmental measures in order to gain the understanding and the consent of residents on the operation or constructions of incinerators. Another issue that surfaced around this time was illegal dumping. Although the waste management and the public cleansing law stipulated that responsibility for disposal of industrial waste lies with the business operators that generated that waste. Some operators were reluctant to bear the cost of the waste disposal and made attempts to evade this responsibility. Their priority was on treating the waste cheaply in order to increase their profit, and not on treating the waste properly. In addition, unethical waste disposal companies existed. They collected waste disposal fees from the business operators on the understanding of properly disposing the waste, but illegally dumped the waste in out-of-the-way places instead to make unjustified profits. Illegal dumping resulted in many serious environmental pollution incidents. If done on a large scale, illegal dumping will weigh down efforts to restore sites to their original condition with costly outlays of funds over decades, placing a heavy burden on both government and residents living in and around these sites. To remedy this situation, the Waste Management and Public Cleansing Law of 1970 was amended in 1991. A key point of this amendment was that it set out the purposes of the law more specifically, whereas the Waste Management and Public Cleansing Law of 1970 stated that its purpose was to preserve the living environment and improve the public health through proper disposal of waste. The amended Waste Management and Public Cleansing Law of 1991 stated that its purpose was to preserve the living environment and improve public health through the restrictions of waste discharge, appropriate sorting, storage, collection, transport, recycling, disposal, or the like of waste and conservation of a sanitary living environment. In other words, it included additional provisions on the amended law includes additional provisions on the considerations of measures for restrictions of waste discharge and the formulation of plans, as well as specific provisions on proper disposal that were left ambiguous in the previous law. Furthermore, as a measure to combat illegal dumping, the responsibilities of business operators generating industrial waste were clearly defined and penalties were strengthened. With respect to incineration treatment, the Act on Special Measures Against Dioxins was enacted in 1999 to control the generations of dioxins and prevent environmental pollution. This act set out the standards for dioxins in exhaust gases and drainage water and led to innovations in incineration technologies and improvements in the operation and management of incineration plants, including the control of incineration temperatures. By promotion of waste minimization through supporting legislation and making improvements to incineration technology, Japan was able to gradually reduce its final disposal amounts. The annual tonnage of waste that was being landfilled declined from about 20 million in 1975 to about 14 million in 1995. Annual dioxins emissions dropped from about 8,000 grams TEQ in 1997 to about 400 grams TEQ in 2003, a decline of roughly 95% from 1997. During this period, growth in production and consumption spurred by the booming economy led to a rapid increase in the amount of waste. and the capacity shortage of landfills became an even more serious problem. In addition, while municipalities were tasked with disposing of large amounts of waste, strong opposition arose against the operation of incinerators and construction of new facilities, as the health effects of dioxins became a major concern and social issue. Furthermore, numerous illegal dumping incidents were perpetrated by business operators who thought to evade their waste disposal responsibilities, as well as by unethical waste disposal companies. This prompted further advancements in incineration treatment, which ultimately resulted in a reduced landfill waste amount. Dioxins emissions that had been a major concern were reduced through improvements in facility equipment and operational management based on the emission standards provided in the Act on Special Measures Against Dioxins. In addition, the amended Waste Management and Public Cleansing Law explicitly spelled out the specific responsibilities of waste-generating business operators and waste disposal companies and strengthened penalties for illegal dumping. In the 2000s, Japan transitioned away from its mass production, mass consumption, and mass disposal-oriented economic system of the past and entered a phase where the aim was to create a sound material cycle society that would ensure the implementation of the 3 Rs: reduce, reuse, and recycle, as well as ensure proper waste disposal. A sound material cycle society is a society which controls the consumptions of natural resources and minimizes its environmental burden. Priorities have been set out for the cyclical use of resources and waste management. The necessary steps in establishing a sound material cycle society are to avoid generating waste, to reuse goods repeatedly instead of turning them into waste, to reuse waste as a resource as much as possible, to recover and utilize the heat generated from waste treatment, and to properly dispose of waste that cannot be reused by any means. Currently, the Basic Environmental Law, enacted in 1993, serves as the law of highest order in this area in Japan. This law stipulates the divisions of roles among the national government, prefectures, municipalities, and citizens, as well as the basic matters for achieving environmental conservation. The Basic Act for establishing a sound material cycle society, enacted 2000, is subordinate to the Basic Environmental Law. The Basic Act for establishing a sound material cycle society is the basic framework for promoting a sound material cycle society and sets out the priorities for developing such a society. It also clearly defines the divisions of roles among the national government, prefectures, municipalities, business operators, and citizens in terms of the responsibilities of waste-generating parties and extended producer responsibility that hold producers responsible for their products even after they become waste. Subordinate to this act are the Waste Management and Public Cleansing Law that was enacted in 1970 and has undergone several amendments since, and the Law for the Promotion of Effective Utilization of Resources, enacted in 1991, with the purpose of comprehensively advancing 3R initiatives that will be needed to develop a sound material cycle society. These 2 laws, the Waste Management and Public Cleansing Law and the Law for the Promotion of Effective Utilization of Resources, are positioned as interrelated laws. Subordinate to these 2 laws are the various recycling laws that functions as regulations for advancing waste reduction and recycling according to the characteristics of individual commodities. The Act on the Promotion of Procurement of Eco-Friendly Goods and Services by the state and other entities was also enacted. The purpose of this act is to help build societies producing smaller environmental burdens by encouraging the national government and other public institutions to take the initiative in preferentially purchasing and using recycled products. In Japan, local municipalities, private companies, and the residents have cooperated under this legal system on a variety of initiatives to advance proper waste management and build a sound material cycle society. Particular focus was placed on the separate collection of recyclables. In the context of promoting recycling, the sorting of recyclables was developed based on the idea that separation of recyclables at the source, such as individual households, is effective for improving the quality of collected recyclables and reducing sorting costs. Gaining the understanding and cooperation of residents, the generation of the waste is key to promoting source separation and separate collection. The government developed and handed out richly illustrated separation charts and brochures to residents in an easy-to-understand format for generations from children to adults. In some regions, local governments held explanatory meetings for residents where they could ask questions on not only how they should separate their waste, but also on why source separation and separate collection was being introduced. Steps are also taken to reach a wider segment of residents and ask for their cooperation in introducing source separation and separate collection, including handing out separation charts in multiple languages for non-Japanese residents. As a result, Japan's recycling rate, which was at about 5% around 1990, when the country began taking steps toward building a sound materials eco-society, improved to about 20% by 2019. In addition to the development of a legal system for recycling, the promotion of source separation with the understanding of residents, and introduction of source separation and separate collection in cooperation with business operators contributed to the improvement of recycling rate. During this period, the focus shifted from solely implementing proper waste disposal to curbing the generation of waste itself, as well as sorting, reusing, and recycling waste. A variety of laws were developed and enforced to support this new concept of establishing a sound material cycle society. In addition, various public awareness activities were carried out to advance recycling based on source separation and separate collection with the understanding and cooperation of residents, who were the generators of the waste. We have reviewed here the history of waste management in Japan from the post-war period to the present. After the war ended in 1945, Japan set up a legal system for provided the foundation and basis for waste management in accordance with social conditions and clearly defined the divisions of roles among the national and local governments and other stakeholders. Furthermore, to maintain sanitation in urban areas, residents were encouraged to cooperate in waste collection, and mechanization of waste collection was developed. In the 1960s and later, economic growth and dynamic production and consumption activities led to an increase in amounts and types of waste. In order to properly manage these wastes, the legal system was strengthened to clarify the definitions of waste and where the responsibilities for their management lay. In addition, incineration was promoted to reduce the final waste disposal amount. In the 1980s, a rapid increase in the amount of waste generation ensued as people's high consumption behavior was spurred by an unprecedented economic boom. To further complicate matters, the generation of dioxins and illegal dumping incidents emerged as social problems. In order to ensure that such large amount of waste was properly treated and disposed of, steps were taken to strengthen the legal system to clearly define responsibilities and stipulate emission standards. In the 2000s, the focus shifted from solely implementing proper waste disposal to curbing the generation of waste itself, as well as sorting and recycling waste. A variety of laws were developed to advance recycling and building a sound materials eco-society. As we have seen, in order to overcome these various problems, Japan developed legal systems and also introduced and continued to upgrade appropriate technologies. Taking into account the social conditions and issues we confronted over these different periods. Even now, our society continues to undergo changes daily, and economic activities and style of consumption in Japan also continue to change. Against this backdrop, we are confronted with many issues, including the challenges of developing new treatment technologies, making further advancements in waste reduction and 3R initiatives, and implementing measures to address climate change in the waste sector. Government, residents, the private sector, and other stakeholders need to join forces to address these issues. Building on a past experience of trial and error in the development of waste management systems.